There are moments in life when you discover that the people you love most are exactly the ones who betray you the most. Margareth Foster discovered this at 82 years old, sitting alone in the darkness of her own room, holding a small digital recorder in her trembling hands. On that device were stored more than 200 hours of audio. 200 hours of conversations she should never have heard. 200 hours of lies, schemes, and betrayals coming from the voices of her 3 children. But the worst part wasn't what they said. The worst part was what they were planning to do with her. This isn't a story about a fragile, elderly woman being victimized by her own family. This is the story of how Margareth pretended to have dementia for 8 months, recorded every word, every cruel laugh, every moment when her children showed who they really were when they thought she was no longer lucid enough to understand. And when the right time came, she delivered the final blow. My name is Victoria, and this is the story of Margareth Foster. A story about betrayal, revenge, and justice. And I guarantee you won't be able to stop listening until the end. To understand how everything fell apart, we need to go back in time. Margareth Foster was born in 1941, in a small town in the countryside. The daughter of immigrants, she learned from an early age the value of hard work and family. At 22, she met Richard Foster, a quiet and kind math teacher. They married 6 months later, and over the next 43 years they built a life that many would consider perfect. They had 3 children. Michael, the eldest, born in 1965. He was always the model son, got excellent grades, went to law school and became a lawyer. Then came Patricia in 1968, the middle child, charismatic and ambitious, who worked in real estate. And lastly, David, the youngest, born in 1972, who was always the closest to Margareth, or at least that's what she believed. Richard passed away in 2008, at 67 years old, victim of a sudden heart attack. It was devastating for Margareth, but she was strong. She had to be. Her children had their own lives, their own families. She didn't want to be a burden. The house where she and Richard raised their children was too big for her alone, but Margareth refused to sell it. Each room held memories. The kitchen where she taught Patricia to make cookies, the backyard where Michael learned to ride a bike, the room that was David's and still had his old rock band posters on the wall. She had reasonable savings. Richard had always been careful with money, and his life insurance left Margareth comfortable. She wasn't wealthy, but she had enough to live with dignity until the end of her days. The children visited. Not as much as she would have liked, but they visited. Michael showed up once a month, always in a hurry, always checking his phone. Patricia called every week, quick conversations between work appointments. David was the most present, came to have dinner with her every 2 weeks, brought his wife Linda and their 2 daughters. Margareth considered herself blessed. She'd had a good life, successful children, beautiful grandchildren. She was aging, of course. At 82 years old, her hands trembled a little. She forgot where she left her glasses, but her mind was sharp. She still read 3 books a month, did crossword puzzles every day, and managed her own finances. But in March 2023, something changed. Here's the translation to English. It was a Saturday afternoon when Margareth began to notice the first strange things. She had gone to the bank that morning, withdrawn $200 for the week's groceries. When she got back home, she put the money in the kitchen drawer where she always kept it. But that night, when she went to get the money to pay the food delivery guy, there was only $50. Margareth was confused. Had she put the rest somewhere else? She searched through her purse, checked her coat pockets. Nothing. $150 had simply disappeared. I'm getting old, she thought, feeling a tightness in her chest. I'm starting to forget things. But Margareth was meticulous. She always had been. And something about that situation didn't seem right. A week later it happened again. She was absolutely certain she had left $60 in her wallet. The next day there was only $20. And then the visits started. Michael showed up unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon. He never showed up unannounced. He said he was in the area, and decided to stop by to see how she was doing. He stayed for half an hour, asked questions about how she was feeling if she was having trouble remembering things. Why is he asking this? Margareth wondered after he left. 2 days later it was Patricia, also unannounced, also asking about her memory, about whether she was managing to take care of the house alone, if it wasn't time to consider other options. What other options? Margareth asked. Patricia smiled, that smile she used when she wanted to sell something to a reluctant client. Nothing specific, Mom. We're just worried about you. But they had never been worried before. Not like this. Not with this frequency. And then came the last straw. It was a Friday night. Margareth had gone to bed early, around 9 o'clock. But she woke up at 11, needing to use the bathroom. As she was returning to her bedroom, she heard voices coming from the kitchen. Low voices, whispers. Her heart raced. Someone was in the house. Margareth approached quietly, barefoot, in the dark hallway. The kitchen door was ajar, a sliver of light escaping. The voices became clearer. It was David. His familiar voice, but the tone was different. Impatient. We can't keep doing this, he was saying. Eventually she's going to notice. She's already noticing, another voice answered. Patricia. But who's going to believe her? Mom is 82 years old. Everyone will think it's her age. What about Michael? Did he agree to this? Michael, it was his idea. Patricia laughed softly. He's taking more than the two of us combined. He has access to her account. Margareth felt the world spin. Her own legs seemed unable to support her. She leaned against the wall, her heart beating so hard she was sure they would be able to hear it. How much longer? David asked. Michael said in 6 months, maybe a year, she'll need special care. Then we sell the house, put her in a cheap place, and split the rest. Silence. Margareth held her breath. It seems wrong, David finally said, but his voice had no conviction. It was just an observation, not a protest. What would be wrong is letting all that money sit there while we have bills to pay, Patricia responded. She's not going to need all of that. And eventually it would all be ours anyway. We're just speeding up the process. Margareth didn't wait to hear more. She returned to her bedroom in silence, closed the door, and sat on the bed, trembling. Her children, her 3 children, were stealing from her, planning to institutionalize her, sell her house, the house where she raised them, where she buried their father's ashes in the rose garden he loved so much. She could have confronted them at that moment, could have gone downstairs, turned on the lights, and demanded explanations. But Margareth Foster didn't make it to 82 years old by being impulsive. She waited, listened to the front door close half an hour later, listened to the car drive away. And then, in the darkness of her room, she began to make plans. Here's the translation to English. Margareth didn't sleep that night. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, while her mind processed what she had heard. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the disrespect, about the assumption that she was weak, confused, easily manipulated. They underestimated her. And that was their mistake. The next morning, Margareth woke up with a plan. It wasn't complete yet, but the basic structure was there, formed during the sleepless hours of dawn. If her children wanted to believe she was losing her lucidity, then she would give them exactly that. But first she needed evidence. She needed proof of what they were doing. She needed time. Margareth had an old friend, Dorothy, who lived 3 blocks away. They had known each other for 40 years, since they both moved to that neighborhood with their young husbands and babies in their arms. Dorothy was one of the few people Margareth trusted completely. That morning, Margareth walked to Dorothy's house. She didn't call ahead. She didn't want to leave traces. Dorothy opened the door wearing an apron covered in flour, surprised by the visit. Margareth, come in, dear. I was making apple pie. Want a piece? Dorothy, Margareth said, her voice low and serious. I need your help. And I need you not to tell anyone. Absolutely no one. Dorothy read something in her friend's face that made her smile disappear. She wiped her hands on her apron and gestured for them to go inside. Sitting at the kitchen table, with a cup of coffee that Margareth didn't touch, she told her everything. The disappearing money. The strange visits. The conversation she heard the night before. Dorothy turned pale. "My God, Margareth. Did you call the police?" "I can't. Not yet. I don't have proof. It's my word against theirs, and let's face it, Dorothy. I'm an 82-year-old woman saying that my successful children are stealing from me. Who do you think the police are going to believe?" Dorothy knew she was right. They had seen cases like this before on the news, in conversations with other friends. Elderly people neglected, financially abused by family members, and no one believing them because they were confused or senile. "So what are you going to do?" Dorothy asked. Margareth looked at her friend with a determination that reminded Dorothy of the Margareth from decades ago, the young mother who confronted the school principal when Michael was unfairly suspended, the woman who organized protests when they wanted to close the neighborhood library. "I'm going to give them what they want," Margareth said. "I'm going to pretend I'm losing my mind. And while they think I'm confused and defenseless, I'm going to document their every move, every stolen cent, every lie, every plan. And when I have everything I need, I'm going to destroy them." Dorothy was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, a smile formed on her face. "You're going to need equipment," she said. It turns out Dorothy's grandson, Kevin, worked in technology. More specifically, in digital security and surveillance systems. When Dorothy explained the situation, omitting names and specific details, Kevin didn't ask questions. He just put together a kit for her. 3 days later, Margareth had in her possession 2 small voice-activated recorders, each no bigger than a lighter, with batteries that lasted up to 72 hours and storage for 200 hours of audio. A flash drive disguised as red lipstick, containing data recovery software in case she needed to access deleted files from her computer. An app installed on her cell phone that automatically recorded all phone calls. And a small camera hidden inside a wall clock in the kitchen, positioned perfectly to capture the entire main area of the house. Kevin also gave her an old laptop that he had refurbished, with an encryption system and private cloud storage. "Everything you record will be automatically uploaded to a secure server," he explained. "Even if someone destroys the physical equipment, the evidence will be saved." Margareth hugged the young man she didn't know and thanked him. Kevin just nodded. "My grandmother went through something similar," he said quietly. "I was too young to help her. If I can help you, it's something." With everything prepared, Margareth began her performance. And she was brilliant. Here's the translation to English. Margareth started slowly. She knew that if she changed suddenly, it would be too obvious. First, she began to forget small things during conversations with her children. Names of grandchildren. What day it was. Whether she had eaten lunch or not. When Michael called, she asked how Patricia was doing. He corrected her. "Mom, you meant how am I doing? I'm Michael." "Of course, Michael. Sorry, dear. Sometimes I get confused." She could hear him on the other end of the line. That little sigh of confirmation. He was believing it. When Patricia came to visit her, Margareth forgot where she had put the car keys. She spent 20 minutes looking for them, getting increasingly agitated, until Patricia found them in the refrigerator. "Why did you put the keys in the refrigerator, Mom?" Margareth looked at the keys, then at Patricia, with genuine confusion on her face. "I did. I don't remember doing that." Patricia exchanged the keys for a look with her husband that screamed, "See? I told you she was getting worse." But what none of them knew was that Margareth had put those keys in the refrigerator on purpose 5 minutes before Patricia arrived. It was theater, and she was giving the performance of her life. David was the hardest to fool because he knew her best, spent more time with her. So Margareth had to be more careful with him. During a dinner, she forgot that she had invited him to eat. When David arrived with his family, she opened the door in her bathrobe, looking confused. "David, what are you doing here?" Mom, you called me yesterday. You said for us to come to dinner today. Margareth blinked, processing. Called. I don't remember. But come in, come in. I'll make something for us to eat. Linda, David's wife, murmured something to her husband as they entered. Margareth caught it. She's getting worse fast. Perfect. But while acting like a woman lost in her own mind, Margareth was documenting everything. The recorders captured conversations when the children thought she was dozing in the living room. The camera filmed when they rummaged through her drawers. The app recorded when they called each other, discussing the next steps. And the next steps were exactly as horrible as Margareth feared. Here's the translation to English. For 8 months, Margareth collected evidence. And each recording, each video, each document was a new stab to the heart. But she couldn't let emotions dominate her. Not yet. She had a job to do. I'm going to share with you some of the most devastating moments that Margareth recorded. Moments that showed her who her children really were when they thought she couldn't understand. Recording 1. April 2023. Michael and Patricia in Margareth's kitchen, while she was supposedly sleeping upstairs. Patricia. Did you get the documents? Michael. The power of attorney. I had her sign it last week. I told her it was to renew the house insurance. She didn't even read it. Patricia. And can she revoke it? Michael, laughing. Technically. But who's going to believe her now? We have 3 months of medical documentation showing her cognitive decline. Patricia. What medical documentation? She hasn't even been to the doctor. Michael. I have medical documentation. I know people, Patricia. Reports can be generated, especially when the patient is too confused to remember her own appointments. Patricia. Isn't that illegal? Michael. Many things are illegal. Few are detected. And Mom isn't exactly in a position to contest it, is she? Laughter from both. Here's the translation to English. Margareth listened to that recording 3 times before she could believe it. Her son, the lawyer, the man she raised to have character, was forging medical documents. He was using his own profession, his own credibility, to steal her autonomy. And that was just the beginning. Recording 2 May 2023. David and Linda, in the car in Margareth's garage. They didn't know the recorder was hidden in the glove compartment, placed there by Margareth when she asked David to check if there were tissues in there. Linda. Are you sure about this? Committing your own mother. David, sigh. It's not exactly committing her. It's specialized care. Linda. In a nursing home that costs $400 a month. You saw that place. It smelled like urine and the people looked like zombies. David. It's what we can afford after splitting everything 3 ways. Linda. Splitting what, David? Her house. Her money. That she worked her whole life to have. David, irritated. You think I like this? But look at our situation, Linda. We're drowning in debt. The girls need money for college. Michael said her house is worth at least $800,000. Divided by 3, that's more than $250 each. Linda. And her savings. David, long pause. Michael has access to the accounts. He said there's at least $100,000 in savings and investments. Divided by 3. Linda. My God, David. Do you hear yourself? You're calculating your mother's inheritance while she's still alive. David. She's not going to know, Linda. That's the point. She barely knows what day it is. Last week she called me Richard. My father. He died 15 years ago. Linda was silent. Then softly. What if she's faking? David laughed. It was a genuine laugh, as if it were the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. Faking. Mom. She doesn't even know how to turn on the new TV. You think she's sophisticated enough to fake dementia? Come on, Linda. She's just a confused old lady. And we're doing what's best for her. The nursing home might not be 5-star, but she'll be safe, fed, medicated. It's better than her tripping on the stairs and breaking her neck alone in that giant house. Linda: if you say so. David: I do. And anyway, it's too late to turn back. Michael already put the house up for sale. Discreetly, of course. When a buyer shows up, we convince Mom that it's time to move to a more suitable place. Linda: when? David: 3, maybe 4 months. Here's the translation to English. When Margareth heard that recording, she cried for the first time since everything began. David: her baby. The son she held in her arms when he had pneumonia at 5 years old, staying awake for nights on end. The boy she defended when he was bullied at school. The man who said she was his best friend. He was willing to put her in a $400 a month nursing home so he could pay his own debts. But Margareth dried her tears. There were still more recordings. More truths to be discovered. Recording 3, June 2023. A phone call between Michael and Patricia, captured by the app on Margareth's cell phone. Patricia: David is hesitant. Michael: David has always been weak. He'll go along. Patricia: what if he doesn't? Michael: then he gets nothing. Simple as that. The power of attorney is in my name now. Technically, I can do whatever I want with her assets without even consulting you two. Patricia: pause. Would you do that? Michael: do you doubt it? Look, Patricia, I don't like this any more than you do. But Mom has no quality of life anymore. Is wasting away. It's merciful, actually. We're freeing her from the burden of having to manage things she doesn't understand anymore. Patricia: did you rehearse that speech? Michael, laughing: several times. It'll work on the judge in case anyone tries to contest later. Patricia: anyone like who? Michael: I don't know. Distant cousins wanting a piece. That annoying friend of hers, Dorothy. Some good Samaritan neighbor. There's always someone wanting to meddle. Patricia: and legally you're covered. Michael: completely. Full power of attorney, medical reports, history of cognitive decline. If anyone questions it, I have papers signed by doctors. Real or not, no one's going to verify thoroughly. Patricia: real or not. Michael: that's fraud. Michael: it's strategy. And the difference only matters if we get caught. We won't. Sound of a door opening in the background. Michael, low voice: I need to hang up. I'm in front of her house. I'm going to go in, get some documents I need. Patricia: is she there? Michael: yes, but she's sleeping. Or pretending to be awake. Hard to tell the difference lately. Patricia: be careful. Michael: always. Call ends. Here's the translation to English. Margareth had everything. Every conversation. Every admission of fraud. Every plan. But she needed more. She needed physical proof. So she began to check her own bank accounts. And what she found was devastating. Using the laptop Kevin had given her, Margareth accessed her online banking. She had always been organized with finances, so she had years of records saved in meticulous folders on her old computer. She began to compare. In January 2023, before everything started, she had exactly $143,847 in her savings account, plus $36,200 in a checking account. That's not counting investments and the value of the house. In October 2023, 8 months later, she had $89,320 in savings, and only $8,500 in checking. More than $80,000 had simply disappeared. Margareth began to investigate transaction by transaction. And she discovered $5,000 transferred to Michael's account in February. Memo. Family loan. $3,500 to Patricia in March. Memo. Medical emergency help. $10,000 in April. No memo, no clear recipient in the records. And so it continued, month after month. Small and large amounts being drained from her accounts. But the worst was in the investments. Richard had left Margareth a portfolio carefully built over decades. Stocks in solid companies, conservative investment funds, bonds. In January 2023, that portfolio was worth approximately $287,000. In October it was worth $91,000. Almost $200,000 in investments had been liquidated. And Margareth had not authorized any sales. But Michael had power of attorney. And full power of attorney meant he could access. Here's the translation to English. And move everything without needing her signature. Margareth printed every statement, every receipt, every transaction. She created detailed spreadsheets, cross-referencing dates of financial movements with the dates of audio recordings. The pattern was clear and devastating. Every time Michael visited, money disappeared in the following days. Every time Patricia called worried, a new transfer was made. Every time David came for dinner, he left with keepsakes from the house. Grandfather's gold watch, the antique coin collection, small antiques that Margareth wouldn't mind donating. Except she wasn't donating. They were taking. And then, on an afternoon in July, something happened that Margareth didn't expect. Recording number 4, July 2023. The kitchen camera captured everything. Michael entered the house using the key Margareth had given him years ago, for emergencies. It was 2 in the afternoon. He obviously thought she would be napping, as she always did after lunch. But Margareth was awake, hidden at the top of the stairs, watching through the railing. Michael went straight to the office. The camera didn't reach there, but the voice recorder did. Sounds of drawers being opened, papers being shuffled. And then his voice low talking on the phone. Yes, I found it. It's the original property deeds. No, she won't notice. I told her I'm going to make copies for her. I'll bring it to you tomorrow. Yes, the buyer is still interested. $850, the final offer. Perfect. No, she'll sign. Guarantee it. If she hesitates, I'll say it's to refinance, lower the taxes, some shit like that. She won't read it anyway. Long pause. Yes, I know it's her house. I grew up here too, remember. But she doesn't need a house this size. It's dangerous for her. The nursing home we found is adequate. Look, let's stop pretending this is altruistic, okay? We need the money. All of us. And Mom isn't in a condition to decide what's best for her. Another pause. 3 weeks. A month at most. Yes, I already have buyers for the furniture. A liquidation company. No, she won't remember anything. Honestly, I'm not sure she still recognizes half the things she has here. It's sad, but that's life. Okay, I need to go. I'll grab the documents and get out before she wakes up. Michael left the office carrying a brown leather folder. The same folder where Richard kept important documents. The same folder that contained not only the property deeds, but also the children's birth certificates, photos from when they were babies, love letters Richard had written to Margareth during the early years of their marriage. Memories, history, life. And Michael took it as if it were just worthless paper. Margareth watched from the railing as her eldest son, the successful lawyer, the man she had entrusted her future to, stole her house right under her nose. She didn't go downstairs. Didn't confront him. She just memorized, documented, and waited. Here's the translation to English. In August 2023, Margareth had enough evidence to destroy her 3 children legally. But legal destruction wasn't enough for her. She wanted justice. She wanted them to feel exactly what they made her feel. Betrayal, humiliation, and the horrible sensation of realizing that the people you love aren't who you thought they were. So she began the second phase of her plan. Margareth scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. She researched, read reviews, checked backgrounds. She found Margaret Chen, a lawyer specializing in elder law and family financial abuse. When Margareth entered Margaret Chen's office, the lawyer saw an 82-year-old woman who looked fragile, wearing slightly disheveled clothes, hair not very well combed. Mrs. Foster, Margaret Chen began, using the gentle and slow tone that people use with the elderly. How can I help you today? Margareth sat down, opened her purse, and placed on the table 3 flash drives, a stack of printed documents 2 inches thick, and a folder containing detailed spreadsheets. Then she looked directly into the lawyer's eyes and said, with a clear and firm voice, "I need you to sue my 3 children for fraud, theft, document forgery, elder abuse, and anything else you can make work legally. And I need this done in a way that completely destroys whatever credibility they think they have." Margaret Chen blinked, picked up the flash drives, and spent the next 3 hours reviewing the material. When she finished, she looked at Margareth with something close to reverence. "Mrs. Foster," she said, This is enough evidence not only to sue civilly but also for criminal charges. Your son Michael could lose his law license. He could even go to prison." "Good," Margareth replied simply. "But I need to ask," Margaret Chen continued. "Why did you wait so long? Why did you collect evidence for 8 months instead of coming to me immediately?" Margareth smiled. It was a small smile, sad but determined. "'Cause I needed to be sure. I needed to know if it was real or if I was, in fact, becoming paranoid in old age. I needed evidence that no judge, no jury, no investigator could question. And," she paused, "I needed time to plan something that would hurt more than just a lawsuit." "What do you mean?" "Here's the translation to English. You'll understand," Margareth said. "But first I need you to prepare all the legal documents. I want everything ready to be executed at the right time. Can you do that for me?" Margaret Chen could. And she did. Over the next 6 weeks, while continuing her act of confused elderly woman for her children, Margareth worked secretly with her lawyer to prepare a civil lawsuit against the 3 children, demanding the return of all stolen money plus emotional damages, a formal criminal complaint against Michael for fraud, falsification of medical documents, and abuse of power of attorney. The immediate revocation of the power of attorney that Michael had obtained fraudulently, a new will, completely revised. And something special. Something Margareth planned personally. In September, Michael accelerated his plans. He showed up at the house with great news. "Mom," he said, using that overly cheerful tone that people use with children and the elderly. "I found a wonderful place for you. It's a senior community with 24-hour care activities, even painting classes." "Senior community," Margareth repeated, confused. "Yes, it'll be much better than you staying alone in this big house. And don't worry about anything. I'll take care of all the details." "But I like my house," Margareth said, her voice small, hesitant. "I know, Mom. But you're not safe here. Last week you left the stove on, remember? The house could have caught fire." Margareth had not left the stove on. Michael had turned on the stove during a visit and then discovered it later, creating evidence of her incompetence. "When?" she asked. "End of the month. Everything's already arranged." 2 weeks, Margareth thought. They were going to move her in 2 weeks. "And the house?" she asked. "Don't worry about that. I'll take care of everything." "I bet you will," Margareth thought. That night she called Margaret Chen. "It's time," she said simply. "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked. "Once we start, there's no going back." "Absolutely sure. But not tomorrow. It's at Thanksgiving dinner." "Thanksgiving? That's 3 weeks away." "You know. I want all of them together. I want them to see. I want it to be memorable." Margaret Chen was silent for a moment. Then, "You're scary, Mrs. Foster. In a good way." "Just wait," Margareth replied. Here's the translation to English. During the following 3 weeks, Margareth finalized the preparations. She invited all 3 children and their families to Thanksgiving dinner. "One last family dinner in this house," she told each one, her voice trembling. "Before I move." They all accepted readily. Course they did. It was the perfect farewell, the symbolic closure before they took everything that was hers. Margareth also invited Dorothy. And Margaret Chen, her lawyer, who would be introduced as an old family friend. And she made one more call. To Kevin, Dorothy's grandson who had provided the surveillance equipment. "I need cameras," she said. "Several. Hidden throughout the dining room. I want every angle, every expression, every moment recorded." "Can you do that?" Kevin could. And he did. On November 23rd, Thanksgiving Eve, Margareth cooked. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie. Everything from scratch, as she always did. Her children would have been shocked to see her so competent in the kitchen if they had paid attention. But they were too busy texting each other, planning the final details of her move. On Thanksgiving morning, Margareth woke up at 5 in the morning. She wore her best dress, the navy blue one that Richard always said looked beautiful on her. She carefully combed her hair. She put on the jewelry she wore at her wedding. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw not the fragile and confused woman she had played for the last 8 months, but the real Margareth Foster. Strong, lucid, and absolutely ready for what was coming. At 2 in the afternoon, the family began to arrive. David and Linda arrived first, with their 2 teenage daughters. They brought a store-bought dessert. They didn't even bother to make something homemade for what would be Grandma's last Thanksgiving in the house. Patricia arrived next, with her husband George. She brought wine. Cheap wine. Michael was the last to arrive, driving a new car that Margareth recognized as being financed with her stolen money. He brought his wife and 2 young children. "Mom!" Michael exclaimed, kissing her cheek. "You look well." "I feel well," Margareth responded, smiling. "It's a special day." Here's the translation to English. They sat at the table. Margareth had carefully arranged the places. The 3 children side by side, on one side of the table. She on the other side, with Dorothy to her left and Margaret Chen, introduced only as Margaret, an old friend, to her right. The table was beautiful. White linen tablecloth, Margaretha's wedding china that she rarely used, lit candles, fresh flowers in the center. "Mom, did you do all this by yourself?" Patricia asked, genuinely surprised. "Yes," Margareth replied. "I wanted to do things right. For our last Thanksgiving here." A moment of uncomfortable silence. Then Michael raised his glass. "A toast," he said. "To new beginnings. And to Mom, who is about to start a new chapter in her life." "Yes," Margareth said, raising her own glass. "New beginnings. For all of us." The food was delicious. Margareth had made sure of that. Light conversation about work, school, Christmas plans. Margareth was the perfect hostess, making sure everyone was served, telling old stories about other Thanksgivings, when the children were little. Michael, Patricia, and David exchanged occasional glances. This was being too easy. Too smooth. When everyone finished eating before dessert was served, Margareth stood up. "I have something to share," she said. "Mom, you don't need to make a speech," Michael said quickly. "We know you're grateful, we all are." "Oh, it's not a speech," Margareth replied. "It's more. A presentation." She nodded to Dorothy, who stood up and closed the dining room curtains. Kevin had discreetly installed a projector in the room earlier that morning. "What's happening?" Patricia asked, her voice suddenly tense. Margareth picked up a remote control. The white wall behind her lit up with a projection. "For the last 8 months," Margareth began, her voice no longer trembling or confused, but clear and firm, "you 3 believed I was losing my mind. That I was confused, incompetent, easy to manipulate." Michael turned pale. Patricia choked on her wine. David just froze. "And I let you believe that," Margareth continued. "Because I needed to know the truth. I needed to see who you really were when you thought I was no longer capable of understanding." She clicked the remote control. The wall showed a spreadsheet, detailed, color-coded, showing every cent that had been stolen from her accounts over 8 months. Total: $94,735. "My God," Linda whispered, looking at David. Margaret clicked again. This time it was bank statements, transfers, each one with the date and recipient clearly visible. Here's the translation to English. Click. Medical documents. Forged. With Michael's signature visible at the bottom. Click. The power of attorney. Obtained fraudulently. Click. The house sale contract. Signed by Michael in her name. Stop this, Michael said, his voice tight. Mom, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Margareth interrupted him. I understand that my eldest son, a sworn attorney, forged medical documents to declare me incompetent. I understand that my middle daughter accessed my accounts repeatedly to make unauthorized transfers. And I understand that my youngest son was willing to put me in a $400 a month nursing home so he could pay his own debts. She clicked again. Now the screen showed a video. The kitchen camera. Michael, clearly visible, opening drawers, taking cash. Another video. Patricia, in the same kitchen, talking on the phone. She won't even notice it's missing. Another video. David, removing items from the house, placing them in his car trunk. The children's spouses looked horrified. The grandchildren, old enough to understand what was happening, stared at their parents with expressions of shock and disgust. But the best part, Margareth said, and now there was something cold in her voice, something that made everyone at the table shiver. The best part is the audio. She pressed play. Michael's voice filled the room, crystal clear. She won't even know what she's signing. We can say it's anything. Patricia's laugh. Who's going to believe a confused old woman? David. The nursing home is cheap, but it's what we can afford after splitting everything. $100 a month nursing home while you three split almost $1 million of my assets. The silence in the room was deafening. The children's wives looked at their husbands with growing horror. Margaretha's teenage granddaughters had tears in their eyes. But wait, Margareth said, her voice taking on an almost sweet tone. I'm not done yet. Because you're going to want to hear your own voices. She clicked again. And then, through the speakers that Kevin had installed, audio began to play. We can't keep doing this. Eventually she's going to notice. She's already noticing. But who's going to believe her? Mom is 82 years old. It was the first recording. David and Patricia in the kitchen. Patricia turned white as paper. David put his head in his hands. Margareth let it play for 30 seconds, then paused. That was in March. You think that's when it started? Well, that's just when I started paying attention. She moved to the next recording. Full power of attorney, medical reports, history of cognitive decline. If anyone questions it, I have papers signed by doctors. Real or not, no one's going to verify thoroughly. Michael's voice filled the room. His wife abruptly stood up from her chair, knocking it backward. You forged medical documents, she said, her voice rising. You forged your own mother's medical documents. Sarah, wait, let me explain. Michael began. Oh, you don't need to explain, Margareth interrupted. We all heard. And everyone else is going to hear too. Everyone else. Patricia whispered. Margaret Chen stood up. For the first time she spoke. Margaret Chen, attorney specializing in elder law. Pleased to meet you formally, although I already know all three of you very well through the evidence. This is a trap, Michael said, standing up. This is illegal. You can't record people without consent. I can in my own house, Margareth cut him off. And I can when there's reasonable suspicion of a crime being committed. Margaret, please explain to my son the lawyer the laws he seems to have forgotten. Margaret Chen smiled coldly. Here's the translation to English. With pleasure. In the state where we reside, recordings made by the property owner inside their own residence are admissible in court, especially in cases of suspected elder abuse. Additionally, the telephone recordings were made with the consent of one party, your mother, which makes them perfectly legal. As for the bank and medical documents, well, those are Mrs. Foster's own records, to which she has full right of access. You can't do this, David said, his voice breaking. We're family. Family. Margareth practically spat the word. It was the first time her voice showed real emotion, pure anger. You plan to rob me. Declare me incompetent. Throw me in a cheap nursing home to die while you spent my money. And you dare talk about family. Mom, we didn't want to. Patricia began, tears streaming down. Don't give me tears now, Margareth said, her voice returning to icy control. I had 8 months of tears. 8 months wondering what I did wrong to raise children capable of this. 8 months pretending to be a confused old woman while you laughed at me behind my back. She turned to the table, where the grandchildren were still sitting, some crying silently. I apologize to you, children. You didn't deserve to see this. But you need to know who your parents really are. Then she turned back to the 3 children. Margaret, please proceed with the documents. Margaret Chen opened her briefcase and began distributing papers. Michael Foster, she began. You are being formally notified of a civil action in the amount of $150,000 for embezzlement, plus a criminal complaint for document forgery and abuse of power of attorney. The Bar Association has already been notified. You have 48 hours to obtain legal representation. Michael took the papers with trembling hands. His face was gray. Patricia Mason, Margaret continued. Civil action of $50,000 for unauthorized transfers and conspiracy to commit fraud. Criminal complaint pending. Patricia didn't even take the papers. She just stared at the table. David Foster. Civil action of $30,000 for theft and receiving stolen property. Plus complicity in the crimes committed by your siblings. David was openly crying now. Mom, please. We can return everything. We can fix. Fix. Margareth laughed, but there was no humor in that sound. Can you give me back the 8 months I spent living in terror in my own house? Can you give me back the image I had of you as decent people? Can you give me back the trust? Silence. No, she answered her own question. Can't. The money. The money is just money. What you really stole was much worse. She sat down heavily, suddenly looking all of her 82 years. But I'm not finished yet, she said softly. Because there's one more thing you need to know. Margaret Chen distributed another set of documents. My new will, Margareth explained. Revised and notarized last week. I'd like all 3 of you to read the relevant section. Loud, Michael. You're a lawyer. You should be good at reading legal documents. Michael picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He began to read, his voice barely a whisper. I, Margareth Foster, being of sound mind, declare the following. To my children Michael, Patricia and David, I leave the sum of $1 each, as acknowledgement that they are my biological children, but not worthy heirs of my legacy. His voice broke. He couldn't continue. Margareth took the document and finished reading it herself. The remainder of my assets, including my residence, savings, investments and personal belongings, shall be distributed as follows. 50% to the National Foundation for Elder Protection. 25% divided equally among my grandchildren, to be held in trust until they turn 25. 15% to Dorothy Williams, my true friend, and 10% to Kevin Williams, whose character and kindness exemplify what I hope to find in my own children. The room was in absolute silence. You can't do this, Michael finally said, his voice hoarse. We're your children. We have a right. Right. Margareth interrupted. You lost any right when you planned to rob me. And before you ask, yes, this is legal. Margaret personally reviewed it. A parent can disinherit adult children, especially when there's clear documentation of abuse. This will destroy our lives, Patricia sobbed. Good, Margareth said simply. Because you almost destroyed mine. David stood up, moving toward Margareth. Linda held him back. Mom, please. I have daughters. They need me. I'm going to prison. Here's the translation to English. You should have thought of that before, Margareth responded without looking at him. Your daughters. My granddaughters. Will have the money I've designated for them. And they'll have the lesson that actions have consequences. That true family isn't about DNA, but about character. And that their parents have none. Michael slammed his hands on the table, making the plates jump. "You're a cruel and vindictive old woman," he shouted. It was Dorothy who responded, her voice firm. "She's a survivor. And you three should be ashamed to exist." Sarah, Michael's wife, took the children by the hand. "We're leaving. And when we get home, Michael, you're going to tell me everything. And then I'll decide if I still have a marriage." She left, the confused children following her. Linda did the same, taking the granddaughters. Before leaving, the oldest, Emma, turned back to Margareth. "Grandma, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "I know, dear," Margareth said softly, her voice breaking for the first time. "And that's why you're still going to have money for college. Because you're not like them." Emma hugged her grandmother quickly and ran out, crying. George, Patricia's husband, was the last to leave with his wife. "I didn't know," he said to Margareth at the door. "She told me you had given her the money." I'm sorry." "I know," Margareth replied. "And that's why I'm not suing you." When everyone left, only Margareth, Dorothy, Margaret Chen and the three children remained. Michael, Patricia and David sat there, destroyed. "You have two options," Margareth said finally. "Option 1, you fight me in court. I have irrefutable evidence. You will lose. Michael will lose his license and probably serve prison time. Patricia and David will have criminal records. And when it's all over, you'll still be disinherited, plus financially ruined by legal costs." Pause. Option 2. Michael returns every stolen cent with interest. Patricia and David do the same. Michael voluntarily reports to the Bar Association and accepts suspension. All three of you agree to never contact me again, never enter this house again, never say a word about me to anyone. In exchange, I don't proceed with criminal charges. You keep your freedom, if not your dignity. Er novamentio claude pod comiter eros. Confira semper as respostas. Sonnet 4.5. Here's the translation to English. "And the will?" Michael asked bitterly. "It stands. You get nothing from me except your own lives not ruined by prison. It's more than you deserve." "How long do we have to decide?" Patricia asked. 48 hours, Margaret Chen replied. After that, criminal charges are automatically filed. The three stood up slowly. They seemed to have aged decades in that hour. At the door, David turned one last time. "Mom, did you hate us that much all along?" Margareth looked at her youngest son, the baby she had rocked to sleep countless times, and answered with a devastating truth. "No, David. I loved you. I still love you in a painful and twisted way. And that's why this hurts so much. Because you turned my love into a weapon against me. You turned my trust into a vulnerability to be exploited. You looked at the woman who gave you life and saw only money to be extracted." She paused, tears finally streaming down her face. "So no, I don't hate you. I wish I could hate. It would be easier. But you taught me something much more bitter than hatred. Absolute disappointment." David opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He just nodded and left, followed by his siblings. When the door closed, Margareth finally let her shoulders drop. Dorothy hugged her as she cried. Not the silent crying of the last 8 months, but deep, liberating sobs. "It's over," Dorothy murmured. "It's over, dear." "No," Margareth said through tears. "Not yet. But soon it will be." Here's the translation to English. 48 hours passed in a blur for Margareth. She barely slept but didn't feel tired either. It was as if she was operating on pure adrenaline. Dorothy stayed with her, cooking, making sure she ate, just being present. On the second day, at 3 in the afternoon, Margaret Chen called. "They accepted," she said. All three agreed to option 2. Michael has already started the process with the Bar Association. Financial restitutions will begin tomorrow. Margareth closed her eyes. And the criminal charges? Suspended as agreed, but kept on file in case they violate any terms of the agreement. "Thank you, Margaret." "Don't thank me yet," the lawyer said. This is going to be difficult. Not just legally but emotionally. Are you prepared to never see your children again? Margareth thought about that. She thought about future Thanksgivings, Christmases without Michael, Patricia, and David. She thought about growing old alone without them. Then she thought about the 8 months of terror. About being betrayed by the people she raised. About almost losing everything because she trusted too much. Yes, she answered. I'm prepared. But was she really? The following weeks were complicated. The money started being returned. First the stolen amount, then the interest. Margareth saw the transfers appearing in her account and felt nothing. The money that had meant so much to them, that they had ruined their family for, was just numbers on a screen. Michael lost his license to practice law for 2 years. The news spread quickly in the small legal community. His reputation was destroyed. Patricia lost several clients when rumors began to circulate. No one wants to do real estate business with someone accused of stealing from their own mother. David and Linda separated. Linda kept the daughters. David moved to a small apartment across town. Margareth heard all of this through third parties. Neighbors, mutual acquaintances, the internet. She felt no pleasure in it. She felt no victory. She just felt empty. Emma, her 16-year-old granddaughter, started sending letters. Real letters, handwritten, mailed through the post office. In the first one she wrote, "Grandma, I know you told Dad not to contact you. But you didn't say anything about me. I hope it's okay to write. I want you to know I'm sorry. Not for what I did because I didn't do anything. But I'm sorry for having a father who did. I'm sorry the family is broken. And I'm sorry for not noticing before." Margareth cried reading this. She responded the same week. And so a new relationship began. One based on honesty, not on assumptions of family loyalty. In December, Kevin, Dorothy's grandson who had provided the equipment, showed up at Margaretha's door. "I came to get the equipment," he said. "If you don't need it anymore. Come in," Margareth said. "And stay for tea." Sitting in the kitchen, Kevin looked around. "This house seems different without people," he observed. "It's quieter," Margareth agreed. "But not necessarily worse. Do you regret it?" Kevin asked. "Doing all of that?" Margareth thought carefully before answering. Here's the translation to English. "I regret raising children capable of doing what they did. I regret not realizing sooner what kind of people they were. But do I regret stopping them? Defending myself? Oh, never." Kevin nodded. "My grandmother. She couldn't defend herself. No one believed her when she tried to tell them what was happening. She died in a nursing home alone, while my uncle spent her money on gambling." "I'm sorry," Margareth said. "Me too," Kevin replied. "But helping you." It was like giving her a second chance. Like the justice she never got. "The money I'm leaving you in the will," Margareth said. "It's not charity. It's gratitude. You gave me the tools to protect myself. That's priceless." "You don't even know me," Kevin protested. "I know what matters. Your character. Your kindness. You cared about a stranger because it was the right thing to do. That's more than I can say about my own children." Kevin was silent for a long moment. Then, "Can I come visit you sometimes? Like for real? Not out of obligation or inheritance but just because?" Margareth smiled. It was her first genuine smile in weeks. "I would love that." And he visited. Every other week, Kevin showed up for tea. Sometimes he brought his girlfriend. Eventually he brought his parents, Dorothy and her husband of course. And slowly, very slowly, Margareth began to build a new family. A chosen one, not biological. In January, exactly 1 year after the money had started disappearing, Margareth received a letter. It was from David. She almost didn't open it. Margaret Chen had warned. Any contact from the children could be interpreted as a violation of the agreement. But curiosity won. She opened it. "Mom, I know I shouldn't be writing this. I know you said not to contact you, but there are things I need to say, even if you never respond. You were right. About everything. I tried to convince myself we were doing this for you. That it was for your own good. That you weren't in a condition to make decisions. But the truth is I was afraid. Afraid of not having enough money for the girls. Afraid of failing as a father the way I felt you had failed us. No, that's wrong. You didn't fail us. We failed you. You gave us everything. Love, education, values. And the first time it was inconvenient, when it was difficult, when it would cost something to take care of you the way you took care of us. We chose the easy way. We chose the money. I lost my family because of it. Linda took the girls. I can barely see them. And when I do, they look at me like they don't recognize me. The same way you looked at me at that Thanksgiving dinner. I deserve this. We all deserve this. But I want you to know something. You pretending to have dementia, recording everything, building that entire case. Initially I was angry. I felt it was cruel, manipulative, vindictive. Then I realized. It was exactly what you needed to do to protect yourself from us. Your own children. How did we get here, Mom? How did we become people who made you feel you needed to fake dementia to be safe in your own house? I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. And that if I could go back in time, if I could have just a 5-minute conversation with myself a year ago, I would tell myself, your fear of not having enough money is going to cost you everything that really matters. You're better off without us. I know that. But I hope you're not alone. David. Margareth read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and stored it in a drawer. She didn't respond. But she didn't destroy the letter either. Here's the translation to English. Spring arrived. Margaretha's rose garden, where Richard's ashes were scattered years ago, bloomed beautifully as always. Emma came to help her prune. She came every week now. Linda allowed it, as long as David didn't know. Grandma, Emma said as they worked together. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you still love my dad? And Uncle Michael and Aunt Patricia? Margareth paused, her hands resting on the roses. Yes, she said finally. In a twisted, complicated way. Love doesn't disappear just because the person disappoints you. Just changes. Becomes something heavier. Sadder. But you don't forgive them, Emma said. It wasn't a question. No, Margareth agreed. Forgiveness isn't something you give just because someone is family. It's something you give when the person truly changes, when they do the hard work of becoming someone better. And even then, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting them hurt you again. Doesn't that make you lonely? Margareth looked around. At the garden she tended. At the house that was hers, safe and without fear. At Emma, her granddaughter with shoulder-length hair and dirt-stained hands, who chose to be there. Sometimes, she admitted. But lonely is better than betrayed. And anyway, I'm not as alone as it seems. Kevin stopped by that afternoon. He brought his girlfriend, Alicia, a law student who was fascinated with Margaretha's case. We're studying elder abuse in school, Alicia explained. Your case is incredible. The way you collected evidence, built a perfect legal case. It's like a handbook on how to protect yourself. I wish no one needed such a handbook, Margareth said softly. But they do, Alicia replied. Financial abuse of the elderly is an epidemic. And most of the time, victims don't have the resources, knowledge, or energy to fight. What you did should be taught. You should speak about it. Speak. Margareth repeated. Yes, community centers, senior groups, even online. Your story could help other people protect themselves. Margareth hadn't considered that. Her journey had been so personal, so painful. The idea of making it public seemed exposing, but also potentially useful. I'll think about it, she promised. And she thought. In May, 6 months after the fateful Thanksgiving dinner, Margareth gave her first talk at a local community center. 23 people showed up. Mostly elderly. some with their own stories of complicated family, of trust betrayed. Here's the translation to English. Margareth told her story, not with anger or bitterness, but with clarity and honesty. She explained the warning signs she ignored, the steps she took to protect herself, the legal tools available, and, most importantly, the central message. You don't owe anyone anything just because you share DNA, she said. Family is built on respect, love, and trust. When those things don't exist, you're not obligated to maintain the facade. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to say no. And you have the right to choose who is part of your life, regardless of how related you are by blood. The audience applauded. Some cried. Afterward, a woman in her early 70s approached Margareth. She was trembling. My son. He's doing exactly what your children did, she whispered. But I don't know how to stop it. I'm not smart like you. I don't know technology or laws. Margareth took the woman's hand. You don't have to do it alone, she said. I'll give you my lawyer's contact information. And if you need help with equipment, I know someone. You're not alone. Not anymore. The woman cried. Margareth hugged her. And she realized something. Her pain, her betrayal, her horrible 8-month ordeal hadn't been in vain. If her story could help one person protect themselves, then it had meaning beyond her own survival. She began speaking regularly. Community centers, churches, online groups. Her story spread. Margaret Chen connected her with national elder protection organizations. Margareth's case, with its meticulously documented evidence, became a case study used in legal training. Kevin created a small website for her, where she shared resources, information about elder protection laws, and links to help services. Slowly, Margareth transformed her tragedy into purpose. And in July, something unexpected happened. Patricia appeared at the door. Here's the translation to English. Margareth was watering the roses when she heard the doorbell. She wasn't expecting anyone. Kevin only came on Tuesdays, Emma on Saturdays. Today was Thursday. She opened the door and froze. Patricia was standing there on the step, looking 10 years older than when Margareth had last seen her. Her hair, always perfectly styled, was pulled into a simple ponytail. No makeup. Swollen eyes. Mom, Patricia said. Just that. You shouldn't be here, Margareth responded, her hand on the door, ready to close it. The agreement. You know. And I'll leave if you ask. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Margareth should have closed the door. Should have called Margaret Chen immediately. But something in Patricia's posture, defeated, vulnerable, genuinely destroyed, made her hesitate. 5 minutes, Margareth said. On the front porch. Not inside the house. Patricia nodded. They sat in the porch chairs that Margareth rarely used. Uncomfortable silence settled in. How are you? Patricia finally asked. Better than when my own daughter was stealing from me, Margareth responded dryly. Patricia flinched as if she'd been slapped. I deserve that. You deserve worse. I know. Patricia looked at her own hands. I lost everything, you know. My business. Most of my clients. George is asking for a divorce. He said he can't look at me the same way. And you came here looking for sympathy? Margareth asked, her voice icy. No, I came. I don't even know why I came. Except that I need to say something, and there's no one else left to listen. Then speak. Your clock started 2 minutes ago. Patricia took a deep breath. When I was 16, do you remember that phase I went through? When I stole $100 from your wallet to buy that jacket you said we couldn't afford? Margareth remembered. She had been devastated. Not because of the jacket but because of the broken trust. You made me return. Here's the translation to English. The jacket, Patricia continued. You made me work mowing neighbors' lawns until I paid back every cent. Took 3 months. And you sat me down, looked me in the eyes and said, trust is like glass. Once broken, you can glue it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. Tears began to stream down Patricia's face. I never forgot that. Never. Those words haunted me my whole life. And yet, even knowing that, I broke the glass again. But this time it wasn't $100 for a stupid jacket. It was $50,000 and your security. Margareth said nothing. Just waited. Michael convinced us it was okay, Patricia said quickly. He said you were really getting confused, that it was just a matter of time before you couldn't take care of yourself anymore. He made it seem like we were being practical, prepared. And you believed him because it was convenient, Margareth said. Yes. Patricia didn't try to deny it. I was drowning in debt. The real estate business was bad. George was pressuring me about retirement. And suddenly there was this solution. This money that would eventually be ours anyway. She looked directly at Margareth for the first time. But that wasn't true. It wasn't ours. Never was. It was yours. You worked for it. Dad worked for it. And we just looked at you and saw a safe to be cracked. Why are you telling me this? Margareth asked, her voice softer now, but still guarded. Because I've spent the last 6 months in therapy, Patricia said. Trying to understand how I became someone capable of doing that. And my therapist asked a question I can't get out of my head. If your mother were dying and you could have 6 more months with her or $600,000, what would you choose? Patricia sobbed. And I realized sitting in that office that there was a moment, maybe just a second, where I hesitated. Where I wasn't immediately sure of the answer. And that destroyed me. The fact that I had become someone who needed to think about that question. And now? Margareth asked. What would your answer be now? You, Patricia said immediately. Choose you. Every day. But the horrible truth is I only realized that after I lost you. Silence. A bird sang somewhere in the garden. Life continuing, indifferent to human drama. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness, Patricia said finally. I know I don't deserve it. I didn't come to ask to be part of your life again. I know that's never going to happen. I just needed you to know that I understand. I understand what I did. I understand what I lost. And I understand that it's my fault. She stood up. Here's the translation to English. And I needed you to know that your story, the talks you're giving, one of my former clients was there. He told me. She said you're helping people. Saving people from what I did to you. Patricia laughed bitterly. So congratulations, Mom. You turned our garbage into something beautiful. Like you always did. Remember when you'd turn our old clothes into quilts? Our messes into lessons? You could always do that. Find purpose in pain. She started down the steps. Patricia, Margareth called. Her daughter stopped but didn't turn around. Are you really in therapy? 3 times a week. Is it working? It's making me hate myself a little less each day. So, maybe. Margareth was silent for a long moment. Keep going. And in a year, if you're still going, if you've done the real work of becoming someone different, write me a letter. Tell me who you've become. Not who you were or who you're trying to be. Who you really are. Patricia turned surprised. Why? Because in a year, I'll decide whether I want to read that letter or not. And if I decide to read it, I'll decide whether I want to respond. But I'm not promising anything. Understand? Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just the possibility of me considering it. Maybe. Fresh tears streamed down Patricia's face. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve even that, but thank you. Left. Margareth watched her drive away and felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not hope. Just tiredness. She went into the house and called Margaret Chen. Patricia was here, she reported. Violation of the agreement, Margaret said immediately. Do you want me to? No. Let it go. It was necessary. For her, not for me. And she won't come back. Are you sure? Yes. Novamente Claude Pod Cometer Eros. Confira semper as respostas. Here's the translation to English. After she hung up, Margareth sat in the living room. The same room where it had all begun 14 months ago, when she heard that first conversation in the kitchen. She thought about Patricia, about her hesitation in answering that therapist's question, about how good people can do terrible things when they're afraid, when they're desperate, when they stop seeing others as people and start seeing them as obstacles. And she thought about herself, about how she spent 8 months living in 2 realities simultaneously. The confused woman she pretended to be and the meticulous investigator she really was. About how that changed her. She wasn't the same Margareth from January 2023. That Margareth was softer, more trusting, more open. This Margareth was harder, more cautious, more lonely, but also stronger, more resilient, and strangely more free. The phone rang. It was Emma. "Grandma. Want to guess? I got my acceptance letter. Danford. I got in." Margareth smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "That's wonderful, dear. When do you start?" "In August. But Grandma, it's so expensive. Even with the scholarship there are still costs. And I know you said the trust money is for college, but I don't want you to." "Emma," Margareth interrupted gently. "That money is exactly for this. For your education. For your future. Use it. That's what it's there for." "But it's so much money," Emma protested. "And you've already done so much for me. You were one of the few good things that came out of this horrible year," Margareth said. "Getting to know you for real, not just as the granddaughter who showed up for dinners, but as the person you really are. That was a gift. So let me do this. Please." Emma was crying now. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, dear." After she hung up, Margareth looked around the house. This huge house filled with memories. Some good, many now tainted. She thought about selling it, starting over somewhere smaller, more manageable. But no. This was her house. She had defended it, fought for it. She wasn't going to leave it now. Instead, she would fill it with new moments. New memories to replace the old ones. Kevin and Alicia for Tuesday dinners. Emma for weekends when she was home from college. Dorothy, always Dorothy, for afternoon tea. And the lectures. Her new mission. Helping other elderly people protect themselves. Her pain had purpose now. 2 months later, in September, Margareth received a letter in the mail. The sender. National Elder Protection Program. Inside, an invitation. "Dear Mrs. Foster. Tentar novamente." Here's the translation to English. "Your story has reached us through multiple channels. Your attorney, local elder protection organizations, and even some of your children through resources you've made available online. We would like to invite you to be the keynote speaker at our national conference in November. Your experience, courage, and the practical methods you use to protect yourself are exactly the type of education that elderly people across the country desperately need. Please consider. Your voice matters." Margareth looked at the invitation for a long time. A year ago, she was pretending to have dementia, terrified in her own house, secretly recording her children's conspiracies. Now, she was being invited to speak at a national conference. Life was strange. She picked up the phone and called to accept. In November, Margareth Foster stood on a stage in front of 400 people. White hair, perfectly styled, elegant dress, upright posture. And she told her story. She omitted nothing. The pain, the betrayal, the nights of silent crying, the devastating moment when she realized her own children were capable of destroying her for money. But she also told about the strength. About the decision not to be a victim. About transforming fear into action. "I'm 83 years old," she told the audience. "And for a long time I thought that meant I should be grateful for whatever attention my children gave me. That I should be tolerant of their flaws because, after all, I wasn't going to last forever. But here's what I learned. Your age doesn't make you less worthy of respect. It doesn't make it acceptable for people to use you. And it definitely doesn't mean you should tolerate abuse just because it comes from family. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to choose who is part of your life. The audience stood up, applauded for 3 full minutes. Afterward, in the networking area, Margareth was approached by dozens of people, some sharing their own stories, others asking for advice, some just wanting to hug her. A 90-year-old woman, tiny and fragile in appearance, but with eyes of steel, held Margareth's hands. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for fighting, for not giving up, for showing us it's possible." Margareth squeezed her hands back. "It was always possible," she replied. "We just needed to believe we deserved it." Here's the translation to English. It's almost Thanksgiving again. A full year since that night that changed everything. Margareth is in her garden, pruning the roses when Emma arrives for the weekend. "Grandma, I brought someone." Margareth turns and sees Emma with a young man beside her. He's nervous, holding flowers. "This is Marcus," Emma says, smiling. "My boyfriend. Marcus, this is my incredible grandmother I always talk about." Margareth smiles, wipes her gloved hands, and extends one to shake. "Nice to meet you, Marcus." "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Foster." Emma told me. Well, about everything. About what happened. And about how you transformed it into something that's helping so many people. "She told you everything?" Margareth asks, looking at Emma. "Everything," Emma confirms. "If I'm going to be with someone, they need to know where I come from. And they need to understand that family isn't an excuse for mistreatment." Margareth feels pride swell in her chest. "Well," she says. "Then you must be hungry. I'll make tea." Inside, while preparing the kettle, Margareth looks out the kitchen window. The same kitchen where she heard that first devastating conversation. But now she sees Emma and Marcus laughing in the garden, Kevin arriving with Alicia, Dorothy waving from the street as she walks over. Family. Not the one she was born into, not the one she raised, but the one she chose. And that chose her back. The doorbell rings. It's mail delivery. Among bills and advertisements there's a letter. No return address. Just her name and address. She opens it carefully. Inside, a single sheet of paper. The handwriting is familiar. "Mom. Today marks 1 year. 1 year since you showed us who we really were. I won't ask for forgiveness. I already asked 6 months ago, and you made it clear that's not enough. Instead, I just want you to know something. You won. Not just legally, not just financially, but morally. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into a force for good in the world." Here's the translation to English. "Meanwhile, I'm here, watching my children grow up, knowing that one day they'll discover what I did. And I'll have to look them in the eyes and explain how I was capable of doing that to my own mother. I don't know what I'll say. But I know they'll look at me differently afterward. The same way I look at myself now. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. I don't deserve your love. But I carry the absence of it as a weight I chose to carry. Uncle." Margareth folds the letter slowly. She doesn't cry. Doesn't smile. Doesn't feel triumph. She just feels closure. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but the kind of peace that comes from knowing you did what you needed to do. That you survived. That you're stronger than you thought you could be. She places the letter in a drawer. Maybe she'll read it again someday. Maybe not. For now, there's tea to be served, friends to welcome, life to be lived. Emma is at the kitchen door. "Grandma. Is everything okay?" Margareth looks at her granddaughter. 17 years old, going to Stanford, full of promise and potential. And more than that, full of kindness of character. Everything Margareth hoped her own children would be. "Yes," she says, smiling genuinely. "Everything is okay. More than okay." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely sure, dear. Now come on. Our friends are waiting." They go out together to the garden, where Dorothy is telling a story that makes Kevin and Alicia laugh, where Marcus is admiring the roses, where the November sun casts a golden glow over everything. This isn't the family Margareth imagined having. But it's the family she has. And it's enough. It's more than enough. It's perfect. The story of Margareth Foster is real in its essence, although adapted and dramatized for this narrative. But the central elements, elderly people being financially abused by family members, having to protect themselves alone, finding strength in unexpected places, happen every day. If you or someone you know is experiencing financial or emotional abuse, there are resources available. No matter your age, you deserve respect. You deserve safety. And you have the right to say no. Until the next video, remember. Family isn't about blood. It's about who's there when you need them. Who respects you when it's inconvenient. Who loves you without conditions. And sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. This was Forgotten Voices. Thank you for listening to Margareth's story until the end. If this story touched you, leave a like. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. And if you have a story of your own, know that you're not alone. Until next time.